Assalamualaikum and a very good day. Welcome to my presentation on the project paper titled Islamic Humanitarianism in Practice, Malaysia Engagement with the Rohingya Refugee Crisis. This study explores how Malaysia has responded to the Rohingya refugee issues through the lens of Islamic humanitarian, despite not being a signatory to International Refugee Convention. The Rohingya refugee crisis is one of the world's most serious humanitarian emergencies. The Rohingya, a Muslim minority from Myanmar Rakhine State, have been systematically persecuted and displaced, with over 700,000 fleeing after the 2017 military attacks. Malaysia, a Muslim majority country, has played a significant role by offering humanitarian assistance and voicing international support. However, Malaysia is not a signatory to the 1951 Refugee Convention, which raised important questions about the country's obligation toward refugees. This research focus on how Malaysia balances its Islamic humanitarian values with its domestic immigration policies. So, for the background of the study, globally, the number of forcibly displaced people has surpassed 100 million. The Rohingya crisis is particularly severe, with large communities flying to Bangladesh, Malaysia, and also Indonesia. Malaysia currently hosts approximately 183,000 refugees, of which more than half are Rohingya. However, because of refugees in Malaysia are considered undocumented migrants, they face arrest, detention, and deportation. Despite this challenge, Islamic humanitarian institutions in Malaysia actively provide aid, showing how religious-based humanitarianism fills the gaps left by the absence of formal legal protection. So, for the problem statement, the core problem addressed in this study is the contradiction between Malaysia Islamic humanitarian narrative and the limited legal protection offered to Rohingya refugees. Malaysia has positioned itself as a strong supporter of the Rohingya, but domestically, refugees are still denied access to education, healthcare, and also employment. They are criminalized under Malaysian immigration law. This study seeks to understand how Malaysian Islamic humanitarian practice can offer protection and support despite these legal barriers, and whether these efforts are sustainable or merely symbolic. So, for the research objectives and question, the objectives of the research are: the first one is to examine how Malaysia frames its response to the Rohingya crisis through Islamic humanitarian discourse. The second one is to analyze how Islamic humanitarian principles are practically implemented. And the third one is to assess the role of Islamic NGOs in supporting Rohingya refugees in Malaysia. The key research questions are: the first one is, how does Malaysia use Islamic humanitarian to frame its engagement with the Rohingya? And then the second one is, in what ways are Islamic values are applied in Malaysia's policies and practice? And then the third one is, what is the role of Islamic NGOs in providing aid and protecting to the Rohingya refugees? So, for the research methodology, this study employs a qualitative case study approach. Data collection involves in-depth interviews with Islamic NGO representatives, government officials, and also Rohingya refugees. Document analysis, including policy reports, and also Islamic NGOs publication and religious texts. Media content analysis to examine public narrative surrounding the Rohingya crisis. The study focused on the period from 2015 to the present, particularly after the mass displacement in 2017. Research sites include Kuala Lumpur, Selangor, Penang, and also Johor, where large Rohingya populations and active Islamic NGOs are located. Data was analysed using thematic coding to identify patterns in humanitarian practice. Ethical considerations such as confidentiality and cultural sensitivity were prioritized through the study. So, for theoretical framework, this study is guided by the two main theories, which is Islamic humanitarianism and international refugee law. Islamic humanitarianism is grounded in the Quran, Hadith, and Islamic tradition, focusing on fardu kifayah, which is collective responsibility, rahmah, which is compassion, and adl, which is justice, and ummah, which is the global Muslim solidarity. This principle emphasizes that helping refugees is a religious duty. International refugee law, particularly the 1951 Refugee Convention, is the global standard for refugee protection. Malaysia is not a signatory, which leaves refugees legally unprotected. By combining these frameworks, this study explores how Malaysia Islamic values can compensate for the absence of formal legal protection, and whether Islamic humanitarianism can serve as an effective alternative protection mechanism. Significance of study. This study is significant because it shows that Islamic humanitarianism can play a meaningful role in protecting refugees, even in countries like Malaysia are not legally bound by international refugee conventions. It highlights how religious-based models can complement global humanitarian practice. The study provides valuable lessons for policymakers, Islamic NGOs, and other Muslim majority countries that may adopt similar approach. It also contributes to academic discussion on faith-based humanitarianism and the real-world challenge of refugee protection. So, for the literature review, the first one is Isaac Khairi ETL 2024, which is the explain the Islamic religious bodies like JAIS have provided social service to Rohingya refugees, including marriage registration and mosque-based education. The right JAIS can manage the marriage of Rohingya refugees with UNHCR refugee cards. This shows how Islamic institution offers practical, legally meaningful support outside formal state policies. And then the second one is Mr. Adnan and Colleges, which is 2025 article. They highlight the role of Ummah as a unifying force. Malaysia is seen as a sanctuary for Rohingya Muslims, but the study warns about the selective compassion that may prioritize Muslim refugees over others. And then the third one is the Diplomat 2020. This article documents Malaysia's shift from humanitarian support to security-focused immigration enforcement. The deportation of Rohingya refugees reveals contradiction between Malaysia public Islamic solidarity and its domestic immigration practice. So for the scope of study, the research focused on Malaysia from 2015 to the present, concentrating on Kuala Lumpur, Selangor, Penang and also Johor. It analysed Malaysia Islamic humanitarian practices and also does not extensively cover legal reforms or ASEAN's regional strategies. The study is specifically limited to faith-based humanitarian responses in Malaysia's context. So in conclusion, Malaysia's response to the Rohingya refugee crisis through Islamic humanitarianism effort offers a unique and complex case study. While Islamic NGOs and religious institutions provide significant support, Malaysia's restrictive immigration policies continue to create protection gaps. This study encouraged a more formal and inclusive approach to refugee protection in Malaysia. Thank you for watching. I hope this presentation provides useful insights into Malaysia's engagement with the Rohingya crisis.